Hey, it's Ultra Retrospective, the web series where I talk about Ultraman shows. And for this one, we're going back to the first full series of the new millennium. Gaia and the 1999 season of Heisei Ultra 7 had just wrapped up, and Cosmos wouldn't start airing for another year, so in the meantime, Tsuburaya Productions decided to bring back an old idea. The budget would be lower than the average show, and it would be released direct to DVD. I can count the number of times people have asked me to cover this one on one hand. It's time to talk about Ultraman Neos.
どうしてウルトラマンネオスなの？
俺よりもミラクルな新世紀のヒーローだからさ。
The story begins in 1995, when Tsuburaya Productions was planning their big comeback with the Ultra series. They were crawling out of a dark age where the Ultraman projects weren't necessarily bad, except powered, but most of them were financial duds. Essentially saying, screw it, I'll do it myself, Supro started planning their new Japan-based show, and this is where Neos and his pal Ultra 721 come in. They were designed to be versions of the original Ultraman and Ultra 7 for a new generation. At first, strictly only appearing in stage shows as a way of building up hype for a television series that was being planned behind the scenes. People wanted to see Ultraman again on the eve of the franchise's 30th anniversary, and this was what Tsuburaya originally wanted to go with. A short pilot was produced for a new series, and it was shopped around to various networks, none of which were interested. History has already been written. It was taken back to the drawing board and morphed into the seminal classic Ultraman Tiga, and that ended up becoming the Ultra series' big 30th anniversary comeback. While his presence in an actual show was squandered for the time being, that didn't mean Neos didn't see any use. He appeared in commercials and stage shows, and essentially became the Ultra series ambassador in places outside of Japan. Since this video exists, that means Neos did eventually get his series. Mainly since Tsuburaya didn't have anything to release after Heisei Ultra 7 ended, so they needed something quick. Heck, when the scandal involving Musashi's actor flared up, more on that in the Cosmos video I may or may not make in the next couple years, Neos' show stepped into Cosmos' time slot, so while it was intended to be a direct-to-DVD series, it did eventually get TV time. Many of the stations broadcasting it stopped once Cosmos came back, but still, it got TV time. With the power of hindsight and a little bit of nostalgic bias, I'm glad we got Tiga as the Ultraman franchise's comeback instead. I'm sure whatever incarnation Neos might have taken in 1995 would have resembled Tiga in some way, but frankly, the Ultra series needed fresh faces. The two latest entries featured Ultramen who were deliberately designed to look like the original, so doing that again would have felt redundant. But 5 years after the fact, after they initially planned for this to be a show, I think a show featuring Neos made sense. By then, Tiga, Dyna, and Gaia had finished airing, all of which focused on giving the existing Monster of the Week format a fresh, 90s-as-hell coat of paint. So after 3 familiar yet notable updates on the established format, I think it was warranted to go back to something simpler, to cater to an audience looking for that sort of thing. The time was right for a low-stakes, inexpensive, and much more traditional Ultra series. That's what I think justifies Neos getting his own show. With that said, is it any good? Let's talk about it. A supernatural phenomenon called the Unbalance Zone, a reference to the original name of Ultra Q, is passing through our solar system and inviting monsters to trash Japan. A new monster sighting in an Ultraman show means an attack team already existing is inevitable, and the one up to the task this time is Heart. Their abbreviation is HRT. Good for them. New monsters and a new attack team mean a new Ultraman, this time a man named Kagura, who is saved by Zafi after an accident in space. Yeah, Zafi's here, he's the only holdover from the actual Showa timeline. This is otherwise unrelated. Neos is quaint compared to the previous year's Gaia, but that's by design for budgetary and creative reasons. The Ultramen, Neos and Ultra 721, being retreads of existing designs aren't the only ways it's paying tribute to the shows of the past. There are stories here that contrast the perspective of adults and children, something that, if I remember correctly, was largely missing from the 90s entries. The music here sounds retro, because it consists of recycled cues from Toru Fuyuki's Heisei Ultra 7 and 80 scores. The tone is more lighthearted like those older entries too, becoming a borderline live-action cartoon in some episodes. The characters are also very one-note, and the dialogue can get pretty cheesy, even for Ultraman.
宇宙の未来のためだ。君も俺も宇宙の一部だ。
But most importantly of all, Neos is a very simple show. There's kind of an overarching narrative about the unbalanced zone that creeps in every now and again. I mean, it's the whole reason why monsters and aliens are showing up in the first place. But this isn't a show concerned with telling a grand story. It's very much married to the Monster of the Week format without much room for character development, like the shows from the 60s and 70s. While a well-rounded cast is possible and preferred, having static characters like this is okay for Ultraman. As long as the stories are fun and Ultraman gets to do Ultraman things, then so what if the side characters act the same throughout? That said, first impressions are everything, and it's hard to root for some of these guys.
紹介しよう。藤原秘書官は内閣情報局とハートのパイプ役だ。
これはお美しいパイプをお持ちで。
日野隊員セカラですよ。
了解。
Aha, very quirky, god. For a show living on direct-to-DVD money, it's pretty obvious the team behind this show still knows what they're doing. The sets aren't too much of a step down from what's expected from television Ultraman at the time. Heck, they were still in a financial position where they could blow up a miniature in every episode. Doing that in a newer show means you have to do 3 recaps to make up for lost money. The big issue with the presentation here, and you've probably noticed it by now, is the frame rate this show was played back at. These direct-to-DVD shows were shot on seemingly cheaper digital cameras than the ones they were using for the television entries, and they don't always slow down the footage for the monster scenes. The TV shows were selective with when they slowed down footage to convey the sense of weight too, but it's especially noticeable here since the special effects scenes are often moving at the same frame rate as the human ones. And a consequence for that is that it makes the show look cheaper. It's not even a knock against it, I'm actually kind of fond of this faster look. It makes the fight scenes faster and more frantic. It's technically not how you're supposed to shoot giant monster scenes, but it doesn't bother me. It also gives Neos stronger soap opera vibes, which is more funny than it is a legitimate flaw.
Your contact lenses just arrived.
1-800-CONTACTS. They can't have my brand. I have special eyes.
I don't have a lot to say about Neos himself, but I will say, though he may look like the original Ultraman, he doesn't move like him. I really enjoy the choreography and bouncy fighting style they went with for this guy, but that's enough of him. Now Ultra 721, this guy, I also don't have a lot to say about him. This earless freak is here to watch over Kagura and Neos and occasionally help out when Ultra's just not enough. I don't know why he's called that, by the way. Ultra 721.
21世紀を担うヒーロー。だからウルトラセブン21。
Oh, okay. I missed that explanation the first time. The way he's incorporated is a little interesting, I guess. Obviously, Neos was developed first, so the concept predates it, but his role in the show, I know I keep bringing this up, brings to mind Ultraman Agul from Gaia, especially so since that show aired directly before this. More like Astra from Leo if the show bothered to flesh out his role a little more, since 2-1 is an active supporting character who shows up in a variety of hijacked human bodies. That's kind of interesting. One of those bodies is played by Robert Scott Field, best known as the android M11 from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah.
Good, my boss.
Very nice guy in person. Neos has a 100% original monster cast, as was the style at the time. Most of these guys haven't appeared since. I'm sure they've been in a stage show or a blink and you'll miss it Ultra Fight cameo. But if they haven't, then it's a shame because— ah, Jesus, what the fuck is that? I wasn't expecting it to open its mouth like that. But I like the look of a handful of these critters. Even this weirdo and his wife. Some of them, not so much. This is the show's Pigmon equivalent, Bamo-chan. I think it's supposed to be styled after Gyaru girls or something. It's a primate-looking thing with electricity powers, which wouldn't be the first time the Ultra series has had a King Kong vs. Godzilla homage. The Zamu aliens are a holdover from the pilot and became a recurring threat throughout the show, having lost their planet and hoping to take over the Earth. They're reminiscent of the Baltans, though here they're shown more mercy. Neos is not a show that stands out, in general. That said, it does have enough sauce in its bones to have a highlight or two. Individual episodes don't strike me as particularly memorable, but specific moments are pretty good. The episode where the captain gets captured by the monster has some reasonably good tension. It's shot and paced pretty well. If the captain was an actually interesting character and the show wasn't so married to a status quo, it'd be even better. There's a military cover-up in the same episode. A government official wants to get rid of the monster right away because it was made using a satellite that they were planning to use for a war. That's kind of interesting. They don't go very deep with it, but conceptually, something subversive is there. There's a bit in episode 5 where Heart actually kills a monster on their own, and we see how they dispose of the corpse. I can't recall the last time the aftermath of a monster fight actually showed something like that. It's morbid, but it's a fun thing to address. There's a mushroom monster who appears later and brings it back to life as a zombie too. Fungal infections like this happen in the wild. Seeing an Ultraman show do something with the concept is fun. This episode tries to give some layers to one of the members of Heart too, the misogynist I showed earlier. So yeah, just an all-around good episode. With all that said, Neos is probably the most okay an Ultra series has ever been for me. It rarely, if ever, dips into the lowest of the lows this franchise has seen before or after. The writing can be kind of odd and the characters are pretty generic, and that's it as far as big complaints go. Most of it is pretty solid. It's never ambitious, and that's by design. Which is admittedly still disappointing since the shows it's supposed to be paying tribute to did have those memorable elements in episodes. By keeping it simple for the sake of being a throwback, it ironically ends up being more bare bones than the simpler entries it's paying tribute to, though it's not poorly made. It's got what I think the average fan wants from an Ultraman show. The fights are solid, there's some cool new monsters, it's occasionally quirky and kind of intriguing with its shot composition, the miniatures are honestly impressive all things considered, and the overall tone of it is pleasant. It's just that the surrounding elements that would help elevate them, like the characters and story variety, aren't terribly interesting.
冷静がなくなってバランスが崩れると戦争が始まるかもしれないわ。彼女とのパワーバランスが崩れる方が。
It's by no means a bad show, I just have a harder time recommending it over others. Let me put it like this. Let's say you want to watch some Ultraman. You've got a job or other responsibilities, so you don't have time to get invested in something really long. But you want to scratch one of these entries off your bucket list. Neos fits that incredibly specific situation. It's a traditionally formatted series made in Japan with only 12 episodes. The only one of its kind in that respect. The show was made out of necessity to fill a gap in a release schedule, but revisiting it for this video highlighted its strengths. When I first saw it, I thought it was a disappointment, but seeing it outside of the context of Gaia directly preceding it, yeah, it's not bad at all. It's simple and breezy. My final verdict for Ultraman Neos? You can watch it. If you want, I guess. It's there. It's inoffensive. It's okay. Did I mention this show has one of my favorite ending themes? While Neos and Ultra 721 haven't appeared as often as their brothers, I did notice a number of elements that would impact later entries in one way or another. As I said before, Cosmos directly followed Neos and fulfills the same function as a simpler throwback with a de-emphasized overarching narrative. More meaningfully, with this show's intent on being a throwback, the presence of a second Ultra, the plot ramping up towards the end of what would be an arc in a 50-episode season, and I guess Neos having a beam sword if we really want to stretch things, this show reminds me of Ultraman Mebius, which aired 6 years later. They're very similar, though Mebius benefits from a more likable cast as well as generally being the better show. In the montage at the end of the mid-season movie, footage from Neos appears right after Powered. Just an interesting detail. Tsuburaya considers the Ultra to come right before Zearth since he appeared in stage shows and merchandise first. Aside from the mandatory Ultra Fight appearances, Neos appeared in a Taiwanese State Farm commercial in 2014. At first I thought, hey, that's a random choice. Good on them for going with an obscure pick. But since it was shot in 2014, I think it's safe to assume the only reason it's Neos is because Chayo would have thrown a tantrum if it was the original Ultraman. The long and short of it for the uninitiated, because I have to explain this every time. Chayo Productions was a company in Thailand who claimed illegitimate ownership over the first 6 Ultraman shows and the characters in them. So a settlement was reached that made it so that Tsuburaya Productions could continue to use the characters in Japan and only in Japan, while Chayo could use them in the rest of the world. New characters were exempt from this ruling, which is why Ultraman Tika was able to get an official release here, and it's why Neos was able to appear in this commercial, because he's technically a different Ultraman. It's clear that everyone involved here wanted the original Ultraman too, because in both the behind-the-scenes video and the commercial itself, they call him Ultraman. Not Ultraman Neos, just Ultraman.
Ultraman! Hi, Jonathan!
If you look closely at the storyboards, it's pretty obvious. If they wanted Neos, then they would have sketched in the little headlight thing. These behind-the-scene featurettes are hilarious, by the way. They're talking about State Farm like it's the second coming of Christ.
Besides the obvious parallel between State Farm and a superhero,
Neos looks almost identical, so it was the next best legal thing. Tsuburaya doesn't have to do this anymore, for the record. I think that's Neos' lasting legacy. He's there if you can't use the original Ultraman because he looks so similar. And since that's not going to be a problem anymore, Neos is going to continue to fade into the background. His show is pretty okay at least. Inessential, but okay. In North America, the show was released on DVD by Mill Creek, as per usual. Your alternatives for watching this show are Tubi, Pluto TV, Roku, Vudu, Blippo, Plorbo, Goobila. I don't know what I'm doing with this bit. By all counts, a completely average show, but I think it says something about the overall quality of a franchise that saying something is average in it means it's still pretty enjoyable. That's all I've got. Have a good night. I'm gonna go have dinner or something. These crackers are pretty good. Big shout out to all these lovely patrons for helping me keep my livelihood, by the way. I can't thank you guys enough. Here is a special shout out to the biggest patrons who get access to videos like this one a little bit earlier than everyone else. Old Metal Possum, Solid Lib, Dinosaurana, Kadorian, Scooter Jit, Mego Muddy, Lobotomy Blues, Cool Bell Zero, Pack Jeff, Johnny Hedgewolf, Eric Guzda, Janos Firewalker, Easterman, Macho Mantis, Manila Fan, Sampai, Big Dumb Media, Navik 15, Jacob Hinch, Dude Bro, Alistair Gilmore, Seamus Kelly, Anonymous Euronymous 1349, Fujoshi Urinal, that name never gets old, Grazio, Mulan Nguyen, Irrelevant 402, Hey I'm Mooney, Krazak 53, Queer Kaiju, Chronicler Waba, Alcoholic Alligators, Ryan Santa Cruz, Avok Robot, The Antagonist, Godzilla Rich, It's God Z, An Actual Dimetrodon, CMG, Red Comet Harry, and Marpzilla. These crackers are making me thirsty.